Well, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much. Welcome to the State Department's Benjamin Franklin room for this extraordinary evening to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Pamela Harriman Foreign Service Fellowship. Ambassador Harriman, as we all know, was an extraordinary diplomat and a distinguished public servant. I am so very, very honored to be a part of this extraordinary evening. I'd like to recognize for you my stage participants here. We have His Excellency, the Ambassador of the French Republic to the United States. We have Senator Dianne Feinstein of California, Dr. Timothy Sullivan, President Emeritus of the College of William and Mary, Governor Jim Blanchard, Jenny Churchill, Ambassador Pamela Harriman's granddaughter, and Winston Churchill's great-granddaughter, who flew all the way from London to be with us here today. We thank you so very much. And there are so many other honored dignitaries here with us this evening. Thank you all for joining us. I'd finally like to recognize Pamela Harriman's trusted and devoted confidant. As we all know, she was her right hand for many years, and dear friend to so many of us is Janet Howard. She was the first person who hosted President Clinton and Mrs. Clinton for dinner at her home in Georgetown. And I remember that moment meeting her and thinking, what an extraordinary person, so poised and elegant. I really think I'm going to like Washington. She, of course, went on to serve as distinguished and widely admired ambassador to France from 1993 to 97 and worked vigorously to promote American values abroad and strengthen the United States bilateral relationship with France. As many of you know, Ambassador Harriman was proud to be an American by choice, having grown up in the United Kingdom and becoming an American citizen later in life. She valued her citizenship and inspired many generations of young people through her service to country. The ambassador herself said, "It is you, the young people, just entering public service, to whom we look to forge new paths of understanding among the nations of the world." Ambassador Harriman continues to inspire the very best of new generations to pursue careers in public service. This fellowship program, an ongoing partnership between the College of William and Mary and the Department of State, does just that. I would now like to read a letter from Secretary Clinton herself, who knew and admired Ambassador Harriman for many years. She herself wishes that she could be with all of you this evening, but is flying, I'm sure, to a country as we speak. I can see Mr. Berger, he knows this incredible schedule that she keeps. It's moment by moment, country by country, on behalf of us all. Dear friends, I am delighted to extend my heartfelt greeting to all gathered to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Pamela Harriman Foreign Service Fellowship. Established in memory of my dear friend, Ambassador Pamela Harriman, this fellowship remains a vital tool of diplomacy. With myriad challenges we face around the world, it is essential that we cultivate a new generation of young leaders who will work together to find solutions, forge peace, and foster prosperity. Inspired by her remarkable example, the Harriman Fellows stationed at the State Department and our embassies in London and Paris are precisely the young people we need at this important moment in history. And it gives me great pleasure to wish them successful careers in diplomacy. Ambassador Harriman was an extraordinary woman whose dedication to public service remains an inspiration. While I regret that I am unable to be with you tonight as you honor and celebrate her legacy, you have my best wishes for a wonderful event. With warm regards, I am sincerely yours, Hillary. It is now my wonderful privilege to introduce an extraordinary diplomat, His Excellency, the Ambassador of the French Republic to the United States.
Thank you, Ambassador. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So it's a great pleasure and honor to be here with you tonight on this very special occasion to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Pamela Harriman Foreign Service Fellowships. I would like to greet each and every one of you, Madam Ambassador, of course, Senator Feinstein, and the members of Congress, Governor Blanchard, Gouverneur Blanchard, as I would say in French, ambassadors, Mr. Sullivan, Ms. Churchill, your presence is very important to all of us, as well as Sandy Berger, Dr. Bainton, Leonard Silverstein, and I can go on and on. So I want to offer my warmest thanks to Ambassador Marshall and Timothy Sullivan for inviting me today. 15 years after she left us, Pamela Harriman is still very present in our thoughts, and both French and Americans can claim her as part of our history. And indeed, she is part of our shared history. A Grand Croix de la Légion d'honneur, she was the first foreign female diplomat to receive this honor, France's very highest, for her achievements and for her daily commitment to French-American friendship as American ambassador to Paris. Let me quote what President Chirac, the president of France at that time, said at the American embassy in Paris a few days after Ambassador Harriman's passing for a tribute that is unprecedented in my country's history. I quote, "Today, the oldest ally of the United States mourned the loss of a great ambassador. Seldom since Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson has America been as well served in France. It's an understatement to say that she was an exceptional representative of the United States in France. She instilled in an old alliance the sparkle and brilliance of her own personality. She was the embodiment of elegance and grace. She placed her own deep affection for the French people and her unique knowledge of our country at the service of our friendship. This grande dame was also a quintessential diplomat. Today, France has lost a friend." End quote. 15 years later, we still deeply miss Ambassador Harriman. I was on President Chirac's foreign policy team at that time and had the immense privilege of knowing Ambassador Harriman personally. And I'm glad to see in the audience of a couple of her former aides, including Ambassador Don Bandler, who was Ambassador Harriman's Deputy Chief of Mission at that time. So we all miss her deeply, but her legacy has never been more alive than today. By her legendary life and her so many accomplishments, this extraordinary woman exemplifies the unique bond that unites America with Europe and with France in particular. As we all know, she embodied England, but also post-war France, where she studied. She attended the Sorbonne in Paris, and then took her very first steps as a journalist at the French daily Libération. In the challenging times that we are going through, Pamela Harriman reminds us that the values that our two countries share, the values that America and Europe have in common, are more than ever our best tool, I would even say our best moral compass to confront together the current challenges we face. That's what these wonderful Foreign Service Fellowships are about, helping American students to discover France as well as Britain, and in a truly exceptional way, forging lasting relationships and thus consolidating the transatlantic partnership that is today more relevant and more important than ever for Europe and for America. Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Harriman was and will remain the source of inspiration and admiration for all of us, and we French will never forget her and will always cherish her legacy. Thank you very much.
Now it is my great honor to welcome to the podium one of our country's greatest public servants, Senator Dianne Feinstein.
Thank you very much. I am very honored to be here to celebrate this 10th anniversary. It's wonderful to look out in the audience and see so many people who knew Pamela Harriman. Up close and personal, Linda Rock, Janet Howard, Avon Bjorka, many, many others in this room. And she was quite a special woman. She was really a true original. Her life and extraordinary career began in the English countryside and concluded as one of America's finest ambassadors to France. She came to this country in the 1950s and immersed herself in public service and giving back to her adopted country, which had given her so very much. She sought out new challenges with dedication and enthusiasm. She traveled the world and discovered how dialogue, communication, and clear understanding of history and culture could bridge differences between foes and lead to mutually beneficial solutions. I knew Pamela Harriman personally and will always remember a 3-hour lunch 20 years ago, during which Pamela and Madeleine Albright taught much to this then soon to be a senator. It was both special and unforgettable. In 1993, President Clinton nominated Pamela to be the United States ambassador to France, putting her background and experience to the test. I was then a guest at a magnificent dinner, Mr. Ambassador, at your residence. The ambassador at the time was Jacques Andriani. I think there were probably 50 to 100 guests there, just before Pamela left from Paris as our ambassador. She stood a tall, beautiful figure in a black dress and long white pearls, her blonde hair accented against an antique tapestry hanging on the wall. And she addressed the dinner guests alternatively in French and English, and just an enormously striking figure. And I thought, wow, she will knock their socks off. With grace, charm, and an unquestionable grasp of history, policy, French culture, and language, she shined as this country's top representative in Paris, smoothing over relations between two countries who, despite shared values and valued allies, often butted heads. President Jacques Chirac, as the ambassador said, clearly showed what kind of impact Pamela had in Paris when he said, "Seldom since Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson has America been so well represented in France." After her death, he awarded her France's highest honor, the Legion d'Honneur. While others scoffed at the value of diplomacy, Pamela Harriman embraced it, excelled in it, reveled in it, and devoted herself to passing these skills on to a new generation of leaders and public servants. So now we celebrate the fact that her values, her patriotism live on and continue to enrich this country's statesmanship and diplomatic corps. She was a one-off. She leaves an indelible memory for everyone who knew her, who loved her, and who watched her and marveled at her. Thank you.
The chairman of the Harriman Advisory Board, Dr. Tim Sullivan, President Emeritus of the College of William and Mary.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. I shouldn't President Sullivan from Williamsburg, not because it's either way, you're a winner. It's my pleasure, speaking not only for myself, but for my fellow Harriman Advisory Board members, to welcome you to this celebration of the success of the program created as a permanent memorial to the extraordinary life and remarkable career of Ambassador Pamela Harriman. I acknowledge with great gratitude the generosity of the State Department for allowing us the use of this magnificent venue. I would also like to thank Ambassador Marshall, the Ambassador from the Republic of France, and Senator Feinstein for their very kind words, and for the honor their presence has brought to this gathering. I also want to recognize a particular friend, Ambassador Harriman's, and the special and valued supporter of the Pamela Harriman Fellowship Program. I want to express my gratitude and those of my colleagues on the board to one among us whose service as honorary chair of the Harriman Fellowship Board has been a source of particular pride. Mr. Speaker, Ambassador Thomas Foley, represents all that is best in American public service. His compassion, his intelligence, his rock-solid integrity have found powerful expression in a life that has made our country different and made it better. Tom Foley has believed in the power of government to create opportunity and so to make our nation stronger. He has reminded us often, both by his words and by his example, that national greatness is more the product of true humility and ceaseless determination than the bluster and the brittle patriotism born of vanity and vainglory. He has lived the truth of which Franklin Roosevelt spoke more than 80 years ago. Better the occasional errors of a government that lives in the spirit of charity, President Roosevelt said, than the consistent omissions of a government frozen in the ice of its own indifference. We are honored by your presence, Mr. Speaker. We thank you what you have done for our country, and we especially thank you for the incredibly loyal and helpful service you've given to the Pamela Harriman Fellowship Program. Thank you very much. The Pamela Harriman Fellowship, Foreign Service Fellowship Program is a mouthful. It is a testament to the generosity of Ambassador Harriman's many loyal friends and of their determination to create for her a memorial that will touch the lives of successive generations of young women and men. Women and men who might be moved by that touch to choose public service as their life's work. The fellowship program is administered by the College of William and Mary and is governed by an advisory board, diverse in its composition, but united in its determination to sustain a program that will always meet the high standards by which Ambassador Harriman lived her life. Each year, the advisory board chooses 3 fellows who are awarded generous stipends to serve as summer interns in the Office of the Secretary of State here in Washington and in our nation's embassies in London and in Paris. I am very proud to report to you that in its 13 years of life, the Harriman program has chosen 40 fellows who represent 28 great American universities. We do our best to keep in touch with every fellow, and we succeed in doing that with many. They're a distinguished bunch, pursuing careers in foreign service and government agencies, in international business and think tanks, and non-governmental agencies. We are proud of them, and we believe Ambassador Harriman will be proud of him as well. We have an uncertain number of Harriman Fellows here with us tonight. I say uncertain because it's a number that has moved upward as we've gone deeper into the evening. So I'm going to ask all the Harriman Fellows present, those standing, please raise your hand. Those sitting, would you please stand up so everyone can see you. It's my great honor to introduce former Governor of Michigan and U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Governor Blunt. He is also a former member of the Harriman Advisory Board. He served as one of the greatest governors in the history of Michigan. I think that's good. You have friends here? Or? Yeah.
We'll find out in a minute.
Yeah. And with equal distinction as ambassador to Canada. He's been a particular friend of President Clinton and of Secretary Clinton, and we're very honored to have you here this evening, Governor Blunt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Marshall, Your Excellency, Senator, President Emeritus Tim and Jenny. Ladies and gentlemen, we all have Pamela Harriman stories. By the way, it is Tim Sullivan, President Emeritus of William and Mary, not Terry Sullivan, the President of the University of Virginia. But today they're both winners, I would say. So, I would be forever grateful to Pamela Harriman for encouraging me to seek and encouraging me to accept the position of Ambassador to Canada. I called her up, and Sandy knows, Sandy Berger knows this. In fact, I met so many of you, including Sandy Berger, through Pamela. But I called her up and I said, Pamela, I think President Clinton's going to offer me ambassador to Canada. What do you think? And she said, I've been up there. I've always loved those Canadians. You must accept this immediately. We did. It was fabulous. And we stayed in touch, and she went to Paris, and Janet and I went to Ottawa. That's my Janet. I wish she could be here, but I will say this. Janet Howard, you deserve a monument in this town for your service. You've kept the flame alive. Now, a little secret. The first week I was in Washington, back in the last century, I met Janet Howard. Nicely arranged for Peter Rodino to come to my fundraiser in Michigan. So, not that I keep score, but you're the best. Now, my Janet Blanchard and I, we spent a lot of time with Pamela. I was checking, she said, don't name drop now, so I won't. But it was on 3 continents. It was all over the place. We walked with her, we swam with her, we hiked with her. We talked, obviously, and Janet always said I did more talking than Pamela. We watched movies together. I remember down in Barbados. In fact, Sandy Berger was there, Heather Foley was there. I think Tom Foley was on his way there. We were watching a movie with the Helmses and Arthur Schlesinger Jr. and his wife. You watched the original version of To Be or Not to Be. It was with Jack Benny. I can still hear Arthur Schlesinger cackling about that movie. It turns out Arthur Schlesinger was a great movie aficionado. Then there's a time, Janet would reminisce, and we were hiking with Pamela in Sun Valley, and we were way up in the mountains. She had this walking stick, and she was acting like a British person would, and hiking in the mountains. And I'm there with Janet, and I'm saying, what in the heck do we do? There was some signs that beware of bears. I'm like, oh, that's really great. What do we? I said to Janet and to Pam, I said, I'm thinking to myself, I can outrun the 2 of them. That would not be manly. I said to Pamela, what do we do if a wild animal attacks it? She said, well, we won't worry about that, will we? I said, all right, so I just kept pointing stay there and punch this bear in the nose as he was trying to teach him in the survival school. Then there was a time she got mad at me. Normally, with those of us who were, fellow public servants, and she loved the governors. Chuck Robb is here in Linda. She loved the governors. She was always encouraging, as most of you know, young people to get involved in politics, which is why these fellowships are so important. But she was great, and she was always really, really nice to me and Janet. She really adopted us. And so we were out at Millwood one night, and I spilled red. We were watching Civil War series, and I spilled red wine on her light beige carpet. And she looked at me, Jenny, with fire in her eyes. And she immediately got up and got salt and poured it on there and said, I think this is supposed to work. Fortunately, in the morning, the stain was largely gone. I was feeling much better about that. I also remember once we went to visit her in Paris when I was serving as ambassador. And of course, it was quite an experience to be with her out in the town of Paris. Janet and I had gone to the Tour d'Argent, the famous restaurant overlooking Notre Dame. And we had met this maitre d' once, so we thought we had a special reservation. And of course, we went in there, and I said to the governor, master, he didn't seem to have much time of day for us, right? A year later, we went back with Pamela. And we went in there, and he was already talking to somebody over at the corner, and they led us to the table, and this guy swooped across the room, and kissed her up one side and down the other. And that's what it was like to be with Pamela Harriman on Saturday night in Paris. Wow, what an experience. And then we first met Bill and Hillary Clinton at Pamela's house after we were in November 1982 when I was privileged to be elected governor of Michigan. And she had some young governors there, Bob Kerrey, Dick Celeste, Bill Clinton, and myself with our wives. And Bill Clinton, by the way, has sent this to me to read. He knows that Hillary had something that's longer, so this is shorter, but I do want to read it since he wrote it. Pamela Harriman used to say that it's the young people to whom we look to forge new paths of understanding. The Pamela Harriman Foreign Service Fellowships continue her legacy to inspire the best of the new generation to pursue careers in public service. And I congratulate the College of William and Mary in concert with the Department of State on this important anniversary of the program honoring Pamela's own service and clear vision. That from President Clinton. Pamela, a lot of people talked about her entertaining, which was fabulous. I mean, you met the most interesting people spending time with her. There was never a dull moment. But there was, as most of you know, a serious side. She was really interested in everything. And obviously the focus was politics and diplomacy. But she was also an incredibly warm person and loyal, and just an all-around good friend. I mean, all of you know, we still miss her today. A fabulous person, a wonderful friend, a gifted public servant. I'm so thrilled that the fellowship has worked out as well as it has. And I must also tell you that it is a special pleasure. I never thought I would ever get the chance, being a history buff, to introduce a Churchill. Although I did introduce Pamela Churchill Harriman at some governor's events, but a Churchill. This is exciting. Most of you have figured out by now that Jenny Churchill is here. She is one of 4 grandchildren. They were all the apples of Pamela's eyes. I mean, she just loved them. We spent a lot of time with her in all those places I mentioned, and then some. Jenny's lived in Hong Kong. She's traveled extensively throughout the world, particularly in China and Pakistan. She studied photography at the London College. She's worked with a photographer. Today, of course, she's raising children in London, raising money for charity, and she's also a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society in the United Kingdom. So it is my pleasure to welcome and to introduce Jenny Churchill.
gentlemen, all friends of Pamela Harriman here today, thank you. Thank you for your kind words about my grandmother. It is a great honour to be with you for the 10th anniversary of the Pamela Harriman Foreign Service Fellowships. I would like to thank the College of William and Mary, who with the Department of State established these fellowships in memory of my grandmother. She was so proud of her association with the college. Having lived through the Second World War and been so closely involved with my great-grandfather, Sir Winston Churchill, Pamela understood the importance of diplomacy and politics to peace and life in a democratic world. From her husband, Averil Harriman, who was Governor of New York and a leading diplomat, Pam also learned much about world politics and met leaders on both sides of the Iron Curtain. She lived a fascinating life at the forefront of world events. While ambassador to France, there were negotiations that opened doors to a successful free trade agreement under GATT and critical Bosnian peace talks. During the years that Pamela was ambassador, she had visits by the President and many world leaders. On a visit by Bill and Hillary Clinton, he said he wondered which one of them had got the better job. President Clinton paid Pam the considerable honour of giving the address at her funeral. In his tribute, he said the following: "In many ways, Pamela's whole life was a preparation for these last 4 years of singular service and achievement. She represented America with wisdom, grace, and dignity, earning the confidence of France's leaders, the respect of its people, and the devotion of her staff." On her death, President Chirac conferred on her France's highest award of the Grand Croix of the Legion of Honor. Her work was done far from single-handedly. Pamela had a strong and professional team with her at the embassy, whom she was very proud of. I must mention Don Vandler, Ambassador Barnes, and Ambassador Sharpless, who are here with us today. Janet Howard, who worked so closely with Pam for many years, supports these scholarships with great dedication and energy. Pam would be thrilled that we are here today in her honour to present these fellowships to those who in the future may represent America and its interests in the world. I congratulate Eric Chung, who is now in Paris, and Elizabeth Campelletti, who is serving in London, and William Hayward, who is here tonight and working at the Department of State. I am also looking forward to meeting the previous fellows who are present this evening. I thank all of you for making this fellowship program possible. It's a wonderful legacy of Pamela Harriman. Thank you.
Let me assure you, I do know that Governor Blanchard was not Governor Blanton. And I have this very vague but not very happy recollection that there have been Governor Blantons who did not serve with the level of distinction equal to Governor Blanchard's. And in my saying that, I want you also to know that I have violated a rule of rhetoric, public oratory, that was laid down in no uncertain terms to me by Lady Thatcher, who for 7 years served as the Chancellor of the College of William and Mary. An entirely honorary position, but there's no way that Lady Thatcher would conduct herself in any office in a purely honorary way. I was giving a talk one day that when she was present and missed a paragraph in my remarks, apologized to the crowd and went back and did it again. At the end of the speech, she took me aside and said, "President Sullivan, never, never, never let them know you made a mistake. You would be showing weakness and you don't want to do that. So never." Well, we sure will. I hope this program this evening has given you a sense of the values and the ambition which have shaped our work from the very beginning. Now, let me assure you, this is not a fundraiser. but I want you to know one or two facts that you can store away and think about. We are only $200,000 short of our aim to create a $1 million endowment to support the Pamela Harriman Foreign Service Fellowships. Many here have been generous contributors to that endowment, and for that we are grateful. But we need to finish the job, and we intend to do it. And we intend to do it in the very near future. You could help us, and I hope you will. We know where you are, and we can find you. In 1996, Ambassador Harriman received an honorary degree from Lady Mary at our college's founding day ceremony. The degree was awarded by our then Chancellor, Lady Thatcher. And let me tell you, it would take little imagination in the minds of anyone here to guess how electric a moment that was. In her address that day, Ambassador Harriman said, "The exercise of American power to achieve a world of peace and justice cannot be a passive or a temporary burden, limited to one crisis, one decade, or even one century. Effort and sacrifice will be a continuing responsibility of the United States. To this grave responsibility," she concluded, "there is no end in sight." In the years since she spoke those words, much history has happened. Ambassador Harriman's conviction that our nation's destiny must be defined by perpetual sacrifice will be heard today in this room by some who agree and by some who do not agree. For the moment, those differences of opinion do not matter. What does matter is our faith, consistent and strong, that among the Harriman Fellows already chosen, and among those yet to come, will be many who share the Ambassador's love of this country and her determination to serve it, in good times and bad, with an abiding conviction that the greatness of this nation consists not principally of its money or of its power, but in the integrity of its democratic ideals and the moral force of its founding principles. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We just got started, so don't go anywhere. Continue to enjoy yourself. There'll be no more talking, and that's probably a good thing, even though we've had a distinguished group of speakers who've addressed, I think, the heart, the soul, and the mind of this program and the motivations which caused it to be created. So do please enjoy yourself. I would ask the Pamela Harriman Fellows who are present to join me up here when I finish, so we can get a good picture of all of you at this special time, at this magnificent moment. Thank you all.